Hey Michigan fans, welcome to the Wolverine247 Weekend Wrap-Up. I'm your host Zach Shaw, and as always, this show operates in a countdown format. We'll have 6 numbers to know, the top 5 GIFs of the week, 4 Hail Mail questions, 3 sizzling hot takes, 2 weekend MVPs, and 1 bold prediction for next week. Of course, this show gives you the basic rudimentary things to know from the weekend, in case you missed it or live under a rock or forgot it all. Read all of our stories and read all of the in-depth things that we do. You can always go to michigan.247sports.com. 78, Michigan's margin of victory over its opponent this weekend. Michigan beat Rutgers with its second largest margin of victory since 1920, the Big Ten's second largest margin of victory since 1920. 1939, the year that the first largest margin of victory since 1920, the Big Ten's first largest margin of victory since 1920 occurred when Michigan beat University of Chicago 85-0. 300, the number of points Michigan has scored through 6 games this season. It's good for a top 5 total in the nation, and is actually on pace for the most points Michigan has scored ever. 238, Michigan's scoring margin through 6 games this season, also on track for the most ever. And just to give you context as to how good that number is, Michigan's offense scored 251 points total. So even if they had shut every single team out, it would be a comparable margin over 12 games as to what Michigan has had through 6 games in 2016. 9, the number of rushing touchdowns alone Michigan had on Saturday. Add that on to the 486 rushing yards. And Michigan did more in one single game than some teams do on the ground in an entire season. 5, the number of passing yards Rutgers amounted to on 2 completions in all of Saturday's game. That is Michigan's best pass defense effort since 1971. And now we head inside for our top 5 GIFs of the weekend. Lots to choose from, so I actually let my mom pick her top 5. They were very Jabril Peppers heavy. First, we have Jabril Peppers breaking free for a 63-yard run from the position of Wildcat quarterback. The man plays all sorts of positions, but does more or less the same thing every time he touches the ball. He makes plays. See him break through. Michigan having a lot of trouble offensively before he breaks through for this run. After that, of course, Michigan broke free for 78 points. Next up, we have Jabril Peppers still in the Wildcat quarterback. This time, I think they had him designed to throw it. Grant Perry running a route over there, but instead, Jabril Peppers, as we see, step, and then he ducks under one defender, breaks one tackle, and finds his way into the end zone. He's got a nose for the end zone, ducking and weaving and running and juking his way to 6 more points and a 21-0 lead for the Wolverines. I have nothing to add to this highlight other than the fact that this is also Michigan's hardest hitting linebacker, most elusive returner, probably their best running back, can do a lot of things, and one of those things that he can also do is he can make Jim Harbaugh, the man who hates comparisons as much as anybody, actually lay down one single comparison when he compared Jabril Peppers to one of the greatest athletes of all time on Saturday in Jim Thorpe. This is my favorite Jabril Peppers play of all of Saturday, maybe of all time that I've seen him. We see him take a punt return for a touchdown and eventually called back because of a penalty. We see him shake one tackler, spin over one, duck under another one, and make his way into the end zone for the score. It was called back. But man, look at that. I'm not even trying to gush too much about him, but it's just hard not to, given what he can accomplish on the football field. So due to technical difficulties, I could not actually get my mom's favorite Jabril Peppers GIF of him spooking the Rutgers players on the punt, where he faked to go pick up the ball. They all jumped. Couldn't track it down, but I'll track down this one, which says a lot about the game. Rutgers gets its first down with 9 minutes to go in the 4th quarter. Rutgers down 10 touchdowns already, but they do get their first down. They get a standing ovation, and a Michigan fan comes and hugs one of the Rutgers fans. Rutgers coach Chris Ash doesn't have too much that he can tell his 200 recruits that visited, but he can say this: Rutgers fans celebrate the little things in Piscataway. And we're back outside for our 4 Hail Mail questions from the weekend. To submit questions, of course, you can always go to michigan.247sports.com/board. They can be related to football, hockey, whatever teams play that weekend, and I'll get to 4 of them in this video. Our first question comes from Bounds, who asked, "We heard that Rutgers was going to load up the box and make Spate try to win through the air, but the rushing stats call that into question. Was that prediction wrong and they just tried to mount a more balanced defense? Or was Rutgers' run defense that bad, which affected our offensive play calling? The weather or RU defense?" So there's a few questions going on there. First, it's what Rutgers did wrong which is a lot of things. It's out of 128 teams, they're in the bottom 20 in stopping the run, both in yards per attempt and yards per game. So you knew Michigan was going to find some success. But they did actually load the box and actually had some success early on. In the first 2 series, Michigan only got 5 total yards, 8 plays, 5 yards. If you're holding Michigan's offense to that, you're actually doing something right. And then from there, I saw Jabril Peppers with his 63-yard Wildcat run. That kind of breaks things open. And then after that, we saw a lot of motion plays in the run game. Michigan getting guys in motion, shifting guys over, keeping Rutgers off balance. And even if you are stacking the box, it's really hard to stop that and slow that down. Even if Rutgers was preparing to stop the run, they were probably not expecting 56 carries on the ground. That's a lot to ask out of your defensive front. Even the best defensive fronts probably are going to get fatigued. However, I don't think the weather was the reason Michigan didn't pass. I think the big thing was just that by the time 6 minutes had gone by in the second quarter, Michigan was up by 5 touchdowns. Passing in that situation is actually disrespectful. Our next question comes from Ryan Peterman27. Which non-regular playing freshman played best in your eyes? In my mind, the regulars that play are Chris Evans, Sean Gary, and maybe Devin Asiasi. I think those 3 are probably the main guys just off the top of my head. So the freshman outside of that group that impressed me the most was Josh Metellus, the safety out of the Miami area. He made his first real appearance. He was in that initial Hawaii game when everyone played, but this was his first time actually getting serious playing time. Ended up leading the team with 6 tackles, including a 4-yard sack. And more so than the box score, he just looked really impressive in just how quickly he can move, how hard he can hit, and what he can do in that safety position. Our next question comes from Farn N. Perhaps I'm saying that wrong, but Farnan asked, where has the TE passing game gone? I know the passing game is struggling, but our team's just overplaying Butt and other tight ends. Congratulations, you found a complaint to have in a 78-0 victory in which Michigan outgained Rutgers 600-39. Look, I see what you're saying. Jake Butt only had 1 catch for 5 yards. From an All-American, you expect a little bit more, but the fact of the matter is that this game did not need Jake Butt. He could have stayed home and rested, and the team would have been just fine. It wouldn't have actually made a difference. This was just an absolute domination. There's no point in trying to pass or trying to force anything to the tight ends. And as far as your larger question, which is somewhat a valid question, Jake Butt not quite on his usual pace, although he is getting receptions in every single game. I think a lot of it is that Wilton Spate is trying to play it safe. When you throw it to tight ends, you run the risk of a linebacker popping in and getting an interception or pass to be broken up. I think until he needs Jake Butt, he's going to opt to pass to other options, going to go for the big play if he sees it, going to hand it off if he can. So against Colorado and also against UCF and Wisconsin games in which Michigan's offense struggled out of the gate, Jake Butt was there to make some of those key plays to get the offense into a bit of a rhythm. You especially saw it in Colorado. I think the tight end game is fine. I just think the situations that Michigan has been involved in have not necessitated them to go to their All-American tight end. Our final question comes from JB374, who asks, how many touchdowns for the Hammering Panda, aka Khalid Hill, this year? JB, that's a fun one. It forces me to kind of think ahead. He's currently on pace for 16 in the regular season. Tack on that typical pace, probably could get about 20 if Michigan plays in a couple extra games. We'll get to some of that discussion later on. But I think ultimately Michigan stops having so many situations where they're so close to the end zone, and I think his pace does fall down. My guess is that he ends up with 14 touchdowns, 1 more receiving, and then other 5 will be on the ground. And I know it seems a little funny that they keep handing it off to Khalid Hill and he keeps getting on these touchdowns, but the fact of the matter is it works, and until a team can figure out how to stop a force of nature like that from getting that 1 yard, those 2 yards when they need it, they're going to keep going. Personally, I don't see a team that can stop a Khalid Hill type creature from getting his 1-yard touchdowns until Ohio State. Now we move on to our 3 sizzling hot takes. If you don't know what a hot take it is, of course, when you take something off the stove before it cools. You don't take that much time to really think about it or digest it, so it may not be the most accurate opinions, but they are hot, they are sizzling, and they are what's on my mind. First, Rutgers does not belong in the Big Ten. Just to give you some perspective on how Rutgers has done in the past 2 games, lost by 58 points to Ohio State and 78 points to Michigan, did not score in either contest. Just to give you some perspective, in Michigan's 137-year history as a football program, it has had 2 losses of 50 or more points. One was a 54-0 loss to Cornell in 1889, and the other one was a 64-0 loss to Yale in 1883. You're talking about a team that has gone 125 years without getting beat as badly as Rutgers has gotten beat twice in the past 2 weeks, and it's beyond that. I mean, you look at the basketball team. wins one conference game. You look at the football team not going anywhere. Every sport of the 20 or so Big Ten sports, Rutgers is in the bottom 17 of them. Please see the fact checks below to verify that information. Nonetheless, the athletic department isn't seeming to go anywhere. The academics are below that of most Big Ten schools, and I'm really, other than being close to New York City, I'm really not sure what they bring to the table or what they will bring to the table in the future, meaning that they do not belong in the same conference as the Wolverines and the Buckeyes. Number 2, and this one will certainly be without controversy if any non-Michigan fans watch this, but I've got Michigan as the number 2 team in the country. I think Clemson is currently the best, and then I think it is Michigan, then I think it is Ohio State, then I think it is Alabama. It's almost the reverse of what the polls say, and everyone is entitled to their opinion. But just based on what I have seen, those are my top 4 teams. I think Michigan currently has what it takes to not only go toe-to-toe with Ohio State, but actually beat Ohio State. I think Jabril Peppers ends up being a big factor in that opinion. He can create a lot of mystery. We saw that as soon as he got involved in the offense, Rutgers really couldn't stop Michigan until the final horn, when before they were actually making Michigan look pretty bad. They forced a turnover, they forced 2 3-and-outs. It was a semi-realistic and close game, but enter Jabril Peppers, things get nuts. I think he can be a difference maker in the game, even if he isn't lighting up the box score every single time, and I think that's what gives Michigan an edge over Ohio State. Ohio State doesn't quite have anyone of that level yet. I think it'll still be a really good game. I still think Michigan could lose traveling to Columbus, but I think right now the Wolverines have a slight edge over the Buckeyes. My number 3 hot take, obviously this weekend I was not in Piscataway. I was covering the Michigan hockey team's season opening weekend against Union, and so my hot take is this: even though they lost 7 to 8 players to the NHL, even though they have 11 freshmen, even though they don't have any real goal scorers from last season, the Michigan hockey team looks like an NCAA. All right, I couldn't say it without laughing. I'll say the Michigan hockey team looks fine. I won't say they look like an NCAA tournament team yet. Long way to go. But I think that defense is deeper. I think the goaltending is even better than it was a year before. What I saw from the freshmen is a lot of speed, a lot of scoring opportunities, which doesn't win you games, but it can help put you in position to win games over the course of the season. I think they'll actually be fine. They may drop in the rankings this week because they did lose that first game, but they led a lot in both games. Saturday's game was an absolute domination over a team that probably won't make the tournament in Union, but they'll be okay. You know, they're an average team. I think outscoring them 7-4 over 2 games, so you have so many new faces involved. I think that's a good sign, and I do think the Michigan hockey team, I believe that they'll be okay. I believe that they'll be among the top 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten. I think that they'll be very, very much in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. Now it's time for our 2 weekend MVPs. Number 1 is pretty obvious. It's the man Jim Harbaugh said that there is no comparison to before thinking about it and actually comparing him to Jim Thorpe, who is a pretty good athlete to be compared to Jabril Peppers. Put on a bit of a show in his home state, getting 2 rushing touchdowns on 3 carries, 74 total yards there. Had a punt return for a touchdown that was called back, but he certainly showcased a lot there. Also had QB hurry, a sack, a tackle for loss. As I said earlier in the show, it's probably not going to always be a box score bonanza for Peppers, but it's just his ability to pick up any position and be better than just about anybody else at that position. That's what makes him the game MVP. You saw it a lot on Saturday, and that's what makes him our first weekend MVP. Our second MVP, I tried to avoid giving it to a unit, because I think that's a bit of a cop-out, but I just could not with this run game. Every single piece seemed to play a part, and that's why they're our weekend MVP. Again, I'll say it again. 56 carries, 486 yards, 9 touchdowns. There are college football teams, decent ones too. They won't accomplish that much in the ground game this season. Michigan did it in one single game. Very impressive and a huge testament to Michigan's ability to mix things up in their backs. From Khalid Hill to Chris Evans, Ron Higdon, Ty Isaac, Devion Smith. Everyone can bring something different to the table, and I also think Michigan's offensive line deserves a lot of credit because they were doing all sorts of different schemes. They were shifting, they were going downfield, they were doing switches. It was all over the place. It was an absolute clinic on how to be a good running team. That's why they deserve our second weekend MVP. All right, now it's time for our final segment, my one bold prediction for next week. And I don't really have one. Michigan doesn't have a football game. The hockey game, kind of a toss-up. I could see them going either way when they travel to Ferris State. So I'll go with this one. Michigan off for the weekend, Ohio State not. They travel to Madison, Wisconsin, and though I feel like Ohio State's going to win, I'm going to go ahead and be bold. Wisconsin in Madison, taking down the Buckeyes, ending Ohio State's undefeated season hopes. I don't think it ends their playoff hopes, as they're a very good team, and Wisconsin is too. but I do think that the Buckeyes are going down in Madison. Game day will be there. I think it'll be a really good game. I think, no, I don't think so, actually. I'm a call an audible. Ohio State wins by 5 touchdowns over Wisconsin. Heard it here first. That's my bold prediction. All right, well, that's going to do it for the Wolverine247 weekend wrap-up. Hope you have a better understanding of what happened this weekend. Kind of a weird one for Michigan football. Nonetheless, if you want to read more about it, you can always go to michigan.247sports.com. We got all of our stories there, new stuff coming up just about any time of any day. Our name is 247. Can't take that literally, but we take it pretty close to literally. For now, I'm Zach Shaw. This has been the Wolverine247 weekend wrap-up. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you have a great week ahead, and thank you for watching.